You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week, we will get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? And a quick welcome to one of our newest sponsors, Hammerhead. Use code Morphology at hammerhead.io to get a free heart rate monitor with your Karoo 2. On the show today, meet Maggie. Maggie is a long-distance endurance cyclist who recently placed first in the single-speed women's category in the Gravel Worlds Long Voyage, which is a 300-mile gravel race. Maggie completed this event in just under 26 hours and placed third female overall in this distance. Earlier this year, she decided she wanted to try out long-distance endurance events on a single speed. So she researched and put together her perfect bike thanks to Knolly Bikes and has enjoyed it so much she's actually gearing up for a 487-mile race in October, the Arkansas High Country South Loop, which includes over 32,000 feet of climb. Here's a cool quote from Maggie. For some, a bike becomes a bit of who we are and a lens to view the world. After hours together, of a ride, a race, or a journey to somewhere far away, a bike changes to something new, something deeply loved and respected. So here's my interview with Maggie. All right, well, on the show today, I'd like to welcome Maggie. Hey, Maggie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I am excited to have you on the show. I'm sure listeners who have been tuning in lately know that I recently participated in an event called Gravel Worlds, and I was pretty proud of myself. I rode ended up being 78 miles of gravel, and, blah, blah, blah. It was amazing. And then I met you at the finish line, and you were cheering and excited. You just completed 300 miles of gravel on your bike, right?
Yes.
And not only
first
that,
time taking that on.
first time, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. And not only that, you did it on a single speed, which I'm having a little bit of trouble getting my mind around it and thinking about, like, if I was doing 300 miles, my mental game, I think I would have gone crazy at some point. But that's why you're on the show, to kind of tell the listeners what it's like to ride your bike 300 miles in one time.
Yeah, it was something totally new for me. This has been a year of kind of dipping my toes in endurance riding and single speeding. Actually, that was something I totally started at the beginning of this year as well.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
I actually built that bike up in February-ish. I had absolutely no idea there were certain types of bikes that were meant to be single speeds and some that really weren't, and sort of learned how to make it a single speed and about gear ratios and everything, and sort of just thought the distance endurance thing is kind of cool and might be worth checking out. And Gravel Worlds was such a cool place to have been a part of. That first time experience, the environment there, which I know you can attest to, is just unbelievable and so very welcoming.
Agreed.
Not just to seasoned riders, but to first time riders and even family of riders that were just there cheering. And it's just a really cool time to do that.
Yeah, I thought from beginning to end, Gravel Worlds was extremely welcoming, extremely fun. Which is sometimes people might not think of fun when you're thinking of gravel and dirt and, sliding around in sand. But I just felt it was fun from when I first got there to when I left.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
They do such a wonderful job with that event and the way they lay out the different routes, the different types of gravel that you kind of get to experience throughout the different races. and the race levels, and to incorporate the running side of thing in there. Just that ultra community, ultra family feel is really cool.
Yeah, and I want to give a quick shout out. Gravel Worlds is located in Lincoln, Nebraska. And for those of you, even if you're not into gravel and you're maybe, let's call it gravel curious, you have to check out their website. It's gravel-worlds.com. So there's our little plug for Gravel Worlds. So I alluded to it, we know when I first introduced you that you did 300 miles, the 300-mile race category, and you ended up women's first place for single speed.
Yes, it kind of caught me off guard.
And not
I
to
wasn't
mention
sure.
third female overall in that distance, right?
Yes.
Wow,
Um,
congratulations.
Thank you very much. I was not expecting either of those things going into the day,
Yeah,
or evening, I guess, since we started at night. I really couldn't be more excited with how that turned out, but
yeah.
also surprised at the same time. There were a lot of really, really amazing and just determined riders out there. Um, I guess it's one of those things you just never know what happens within 300 miles.
Right.
Some days you have a good day on the bike, it's anything. Some days you don't. You never really know what's going to be coming at the other end of the bike ride. So I can say I had a good day on the bike.
Right. And you mentioned you started in the evening. And I believe, if I read right, you completed this race in less than 26 hours, right?
Yes, all of the 300-mile distance, the long voyage they call it. We all started at 5 p.m. on Friday night
Mm.
and rode overnight into Saturday afternoon. And I originally had kind of given myself a 27-hour goal time. I figured 24 hours would be cool, 30 hours was the cutoff, split the difference, and we'll call it good. And I ended up coming in, I believe it was 25 hours and 56 minutes or
Oh,
something
wow.
along those lines.
Yeah.
So just under the 26-hour mark.
Wow. And you mentioned single speed. And for those listeners, I'm sure everyone knows what that means, but it literally means you just have one gear. So, do you want to tell us about your sweet bike setup? A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show.
Sure. I ride a Knolly Cash, which is it's a company up in British Columbia.
Mm.
They are primarily mountain bikes, but have dipped their toes into the gravel world, and they kind of consider it a progressive geometry gravel bike since they take a bit from the mountain bike
Mm-hmm.
background. Um, they make 6 different frame sizes, which I found incredibly amazing. I am pretty short, so it's actually difficult to find a bike that fits well.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually do 3 different tube sets in the engineering of their bikes
Mm.
so that it's not just a shrunk down version of their larger sizes. They're actually engineered differently from the small to the large. And one thing I really loved about that is I can run 700C tires or 650B tires with a lot of different size ranges without having any toe overlap.
Oh, wow.
For short riders, that's something that's kind of unheard of in a lot of bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's actually not engineered to be a single speed bike. So I had a chain tensioner on it at first. Again, I had said before, I wasn't really sure that there were differences in single speed bikes. And I started doing a lot of homework, and it has a threaded bottom bracket. And I actually found a company called First Components, and they make threaded eccentric bottom brackets. And an eccentric bottom bracket actually is made to adjust a bit of chain tension out, so you can run it as a single speed. And I ran a 40-19 gearing for the race, having the gravel seas or nonstop rollers throughout the 25 hours of racing. I didn't want to overdo my legs, but wanted enough momentum that I could still carry myself up the climbs. And I would say it was kind of the perfect gearing for the day
Wow. And
for me.
I think that would be such a hard decision to make, going into it because It's not like you can change it once you're on.
Yes, and conditions can make it different. I had a lot of sleepless nights deciding on gear ratios and gear inches. And again, since it was such a learning curve for me, I probably overthink everything having to do with a single speed. But I think that was part of the fun for me about starting to ride a single speed, was really exploring how the different gear ratios feel,
Mm-hmm.
the type of terrain that you can tackle with an unloaded bike, with a loaded bike, and for bike packing setups. And so that really brought a lot of enjoyment to this season, which has been so different for me for races than anything I've experienced before. But I've really enjoyed it and have found that bike, the Knolly Cash, so versatile for every type of riding I seem to throw at it.
Hmm. And had you had a long distance experience with that gearing and on that bike before the 300 miler?
At the beginning of this year, or I guess the beginning of kind of our warmer season, I did the Michigan Coast to Coast gravel grinder,
Hmm.
which is a 200, this year was 213-mile race from the eastern border of Michigan all the way to the western border. And we start, you dip your wheel in the water
Oh,
in the
sure.
morning and ride and dip your front wheel into the water at the completion of the race. And that was my first long distance race or ride on a single speed. And I was the first female to attempt and complete that on a single speed this year, which
Oh,
was kind of
wow.
cool.
Yeah. And way to just like go for it, man. Like your first time and you do over 200 miles on a single speed. That's like really impressive.
Thank you. I still kind of think back and wonder what I was thinking, but I guess it's one of those like you never know what's going to happen unless you try it. So go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay, so we're literally talking this is now your second event where you do 300 miles this time and in
Yes.
Nebraska, which many people who drive, I think it's Interstate 80 through Nebraska are like, "Wow, super flat, boring." I am going to firmly disagree and I'm assuming you will too.
100%.
There was in my I did 78 miles and I think it was almost 6,000 feet of climb, and that was crazy. Like every single time you'd get to the top of a climb and then you'd coast down and then boom, another one. It was just nonstop. So tell us your experience.
Very similar. um, Yeah, I was honestly very surprised. I live in Erie, Pennsylvania, and
Mm,
we have a lot of steep, pitchy climbs, long climbs, but a lot of flat and in between. And
mm-hmm.
so I had looked at the elevation profile of the race, and for the 300 mile, it ended up being just over 15,000 feet of elevation.
Wow.
And I was watching as I was going. I think the first 100 miles had the most of the breakdown with about 6,300 feet of elevation.
Mm,
And it really, truly was just nonstop rollers. Nothing really high, a couple hundred feet here and there.
mm-hmm.
No overly steep grades, but they just never quit.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting towards the probably final 30 miles of the race, and you would turn a corner and from the top, the crest of the previous hill, think like, yes, this looks like it's going to be flat for a little while. And you'd turn the corner and just was a hill and nothing but that through the whole of the race.
Oh,
So I was very, very surprised at the terrain, but absolutely Nebraska is not flat.
yes, that is just so true. Okay, so next topic is nutrition and snacks. And this is probably, the very moment that I saw you at the finish line and, we talked. I said you should be on the podcast. And then immediately I was drawn to your snack bag and you showed me what was in it. And I think, I'm sorry to say, but I think I said, ew. But
Yes.
you like, give us give us your version of nutrition for that 300 miles.
Yeah. I feel like this is one of the pieces that I just, I know, eat early, eat often. You hear that a lot for endurance races.
Mm-hmm.
Eat whatever sounds good. And I don't know what I was thinking with the combinations that I was coming up with, but I will always eat bars, like Kind bars, honey bun, honey stinger waffles. I like Sport and Science gels. So those are kind of standards, whether gas station or some of the things I carry with me. But
Mm-hmm.
this was my first time racing with, or even riding with a feeder bag on the front. And that's a little pouch that's open. You can put food in it. You can put a water bottle in it. I love the pouch that I got. It's from a Cleveland company. It's actually a guy called Fuzzy Stitchworks. It was awesome. I had my GPS in there, and I kind of told myself at the beginning of the race, at every gas station stop that I do, pour something in there, always have food available, so I know I'd eat it. So our first stop was around mile 51, and I dumped in a bag of honey mustard pretzel twists and mini golden Oreos. And
Oh,
in my head,
sweet and salty.
yes, in my head, I was just thinking these are going to be separated in here. So I'll reach in and I can eat an Oreo. I'll reach in and I can eat the pretzels. I've got this combination, and obviously they mixed together immediately, and it tasted like honey mustard Oreos. But that's what was in there. So I was eating it and I kind of got accustomed to it. And then at the next stop, I dumped in cashews and trail mix. So now I have cashews and trail mix and Oreos and honey mustard pretzels. And
Okay,
I
all
was
right.
just eating this stuff by the handful. And at the next gas station, I put mini glazed donuts in. So those got broken up in this mix. And I think I had pistachios at another stop. And then I was breaking up sweet and salty bars. And so everything was just mixed together. And overnight, the pretzels and the Oreos got really soft
Oh
because it
no.
actually cooled off quite a lot. So it was just handfuls of nut mix, pretzel mush. But I was eating it through the whole of the race. And, I would take a bite, and I would even probably out loud too, because with that many miles, you're often alone, and you'd be like, this is so disgusting. But for some reason, it's going down really easily. And I ended up no GI issues, nothing like that. So it worked for me, as disgusting as it sounds.
And I guess the big question is, have you tried to recreate it since?
Definitely not. I took a picture of it so I can remember what never to do again.
Yes. And for those of you who don't know what a feed bag is, it's actually a bag that's attached to your bike firmly, and then it's open at the top, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm picturing you're riding along, and maybe you thought it was funny at some points where you're like, what will I get in this handful? And then it probably got to a point where you're like, ugh, same
Absolutely.
handful.
Absolutely.
Oh man. Do you have anything you want to tell us about like mental status of being on your bike for that many hours, that many miles, and probably alone for a lot of it? A quick interruption to introduce our newest sponsor, Hammerhead. The Hammerhead Karoo 2 cycling computer helps you find your path forward and unlock your full potential on every ride. And listen, for a limited time, listeners can get a free heart rate monitor with the purchase of a Hammerhead Karoo 2. Visit hammerhead.io and use promo code Murphology at checkout to get yours today. Now back to the show.
Yeah, I've done a couple geared races that were 100 miles, like smaller, local to our area, and have been alone a lot. And so I think I have gotten accustomed. I sing to myself, I talk to myself, I find that helpful. This was the first overnighter that I did, and I could not have been more lucky. I rode with another single speed rider named Trisha. She was third female. Hey, we rode together through the night. And after hearing a lot of other recounts from people of how difficult riding alone through the night was, I really realized how lucky I was to have found somebody to spend that time with. And we talked, we chatted, we joked around, we kept each other awake. And it really kind of set the pace, I guess, for mental status for the whole of the ride. Um, and I felt really good. I think after the sun came up, that was the weirdest shift for me. I'd felt tired overnight, a little, we'd stop on the bike and do some stretching and things like that, and kind of work on keeping yourself awake, whether it's, putting on some music, making sure that you're eating snacks, drinking water, whatever, reminding yourself to do that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the sun came up in the morning, and just the heat after the cold temperatures in the evening felt to me like I'd had 15 hours of sleep, and my legs felt so fresh.
Wow.
And I just started kind of pushing my pace a little bit, which really surprised me. I thought that would be kind of a lag in the day. And so I actually spent a lot more daytime hours by myself, which I think mentally was a huge boost. We all go out in the daytime and ride, and
Mm-hmm.
you can carry on those miles a little bit easier. The low point for me, I think it kind of is a combination. At some point, I stopped feeling like eating. I couldn't stand that snack mix anymore. um, it's hot. You're pushing, dehydrated. Your butt hurts. Your legs hurt. You're
Mm-hmm.
tired. Kind of that whole thing. And mentally, that was a tough push to kind of get through. I rode with a good friend of mine from Cleveland, E, for a good bit of the afternoon, and we kind of parted ways at the Gooder party at mile 250. And so the next stretch, I was by myself, trying to push my pace, and just not in a great mental spot of tired. I called my wife on the phone. I'd hopped off my bike and like, I don't want to ride anymore. I'm gonna sleep in a ditch. And she is so good at motivating, and she's like, no, you need to get back on your bike. You need to start pedaling. You've got like 30 miles
I was
left to
gonna say,
go.
at that point you were so close to the end.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. I did. I hopped back on my bike and kept pedaling. And I know when I pulled into the checkpoint, it was at mile 277. That was absolutely the roughest spot for me. I wasn't feeling great, a little nauseous. I drank a Coke. They were so amazing. They refilled my pack, got my water bottles all filled up. And I think I was just kind of wandering around drinking my Coke, wishing I didn't have to get back on my bike.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around, and my friend E was just pushing the pace coming up the field to this checkpoint. And I probably was the most excited I've ever been in a race before. And it was like, here's my friend that I can ride with
Someone I
and
know.
bring me energy. And I think we hugged and, grabbed a Coke, did our thing. We're like, all right, this is it. Couple more miles.
Yeah.
And one of the 150 riders was, coming out of the chute with us. And she just said, you guys got like 5% left. You got this. And it was just like those little things that I think people don't realize how motivational they actually are to hear. And you're like, hell yes, we have 95% of this race done. It's go time. And I mean, it just, as smooth sailing as it could, it was really kind of smooth sailing through the end. We listened to some pump up jams on the way in and just chatted. And that really made the miles and that pain sort of dissipate. And then the next thing you know, you're crossing the finish line and
Wow.
you're done.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. Having, hearing a loved one on the phone is motivating. Seeing someone the music, like it feels like all of the good things were aligning for you. But then you still have to remember you've been on your bike for almost 300 miles. Like the mental, I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around it. And just like the physical, the lack of sleep, the grinding of the same movement over and over and over again. I don't know. I'm just so impressed. It's hard to put into words, and you actually, you lived through it.
Yeah, I think it still kind of surprises me. I think the mindset I had leading into the day was really helpful. I found for Michigan, I'm like, well, I'm not really racing anybody because I'm on a single speed. I just need to ride this and finish the mileage. And that that worked really well for Michigan. It felt good to, just kind of keep that, and instead of having this like race
Mm-hmm.
driven mindset. And so when I walked into the start of Gravel Worlds, I was chatting with some friends, and they kind of said 300 miles. And I said, well, I did 213. So really it's, what is that? Like 93 miles of unknown. And that was kind of the mindset that I had to keep through the race. I said, "Oh, okay, when I get to 213 miles, then I'll know, because I
Yeah.
know what it's like to ride 213.
Yeah.
Then I'll know what it's like from this unknown side of things." And I sort of kept that mindset through the whole thing, like waiting for 213 to kind of tick over on my computer.
Wow.
So I don't know if that helped or if it was like the perfect distraction from thinking about anything else, but it seemed to work.
Yeah. And, tell us all what it felt like standing on that podium, knowing what you did and where you were.
That was very weird. Um, I was, I in awe of everybody that's out there, and Claire and Paige, who were, first and second, are just amazing
Mm.
cyclists, and all the riders from the 150 and the 78 and every distance. Um, and looking out into the crowd of people that were sort of gathered around the podium, I saw so many people that I recognized from Instagram.
Oh,
And I think more in awe of all these people in the crowd, and that's what I was really paying attention to. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person and this person and this person, it's so amazing to see them in person. And so I think really I was so excited to feel like a part of something like that, but actually it was, I think, probably more all these people that I saw and that I recognized, and in the cycling community. So it was really surreal. And I think it probably was about a week till it really set in, like, holy crap, that was a 300-mile race on the
yeah.
single speed, and you actually did pretty well.
Wow.
So it took a little while to kick in, I think. But I think that's part of, to me, that whole, the gravel community and the gravel family that everybody sort of talks about within that ride community and
Mm.
race community. It's, everybody is so excited for everybody else at
Mm.
these events.
Mm-hmm.
And on social media and things like that. To me, the most exciting part of the event was getting to meet a lot of and interact with people that I've followed and chatted with through social media for the last couple years.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree, because I felt exactly the same way. I'd be walking through the crowd and I'd be like, oh, I follow that person. Like, oh my gosh, should I say hi? Like, what should I do? Anyway, so I felt very similar,
Yes.
but
A
um,
weekend of fangirling.
yes, exactly. Yeah. So what do you think it is about long distance cycling that you find appealing, or, since it's maybe a little bit new, having those super long distances, like what is appealing about it?
um I think the whole idea of endurance goes back to actually like childhood for me. When I was 9, my swim coach was the first female to swim across Lake Erie.
Oh,
Her
wow.
name's Hallie Reed. We have Hallie Reed Park down at the beach, and my mom took me down to watch Hallie come in from her swim and complete this. And I just thought it was the coolest thing that I'd ever seen, that somebody swam across the lake. And I guess ever since then, it's sort of been ingrained in me that endurance is something worth exploring.
Mm-hmm.
It took me quite a long time. I'm 39 now, so gap of 30 years in there, to do something about it. But I love the idea of finding out your personal limits. I think for me, it's just really exploring, do I have the physical and the mental capacity to take something like this on, to push past the comfort level that
Mm-hmm.
I know. Um, and so it really is just, I mean, what's the worst that could, what's the worst that could happen? Why not give it a try?
Right.
And I guess I really don't have a better answer than that. Why gravitating towards those long distances? I love the idea of bike packing and bike touring and hop on the bike and see where it takes you. And so I
Mm-hmm.
guess that same desire for adventure sort of goes into this sort of race side of things too. Here's a 300-mile course that's laid out for you. You don't have all the quite as much of the planning
Mm-hmm.
side of things, and see what you're made of. And it's a challenge to be able to do that. And, personal progression, and also being able to interact with other people that are taking on these same events, and meeting other people that like to do the same thing or have that what the hell's next, what else can I do
Right.
if I've done this sort of thing. And um, I think I just really appreciate pushing myself that way, but also finding people to push alongside with, and keep growing that community.
Yeah. And I also think it's really cool that like you and I can both exist at the same sort of event because I'm not doing that event to race. I'm doing it, I call myself a recreational rider, right? Like I ride my bike probably, I don't know, 5 to 7 days a week, but I'm not there to like go as fast as I can. I'm there to more experience, meet people, see what it's like. And still, I'm pushing myself. But it's so fun that an event like Gravel Worlds, both of us can exist and still have a blast. You're pushing yourself, I'm pushing myself. You happen to get on the podium. I did not, but I that wasn't my goal. So I love that about events like especially gravel events.
Absolutely. It really is. No matter what the distance you're taking on, or, even if somebody's getting on a bike for the first time and it's a push to get to 5 miles, that same mindset is the push to get to 300 miles.
Yeah.
And I think it just continues that. I don't know, that bikes are the very first taste of freedom that we have as kids. Like,
Mhm.
you don't have to walk away from the house. You can bike a little further than you got. And I think for me, every time I get on the bike and get to explore somewhere new, it's that same total feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people experience the bike in that same way. And so from 5 miles to 20 miles to 100 miles to whatever, it's just that shared love of freedom all over again, and excitement to be on the bike. And absolutely events that cater to the excitement of the bike,
Mhm.
rather than you have to be on a bike and you have to do this to win something, or anything along those rides. And bikes equates career, or there's a time and a place for that, and
Mhm.
there is a time and a place for absolutely everybody else. And that experience of bikes mean freedom and fun. And gravel worlds and a lot of events really do cater to that. And I think it gets more people on bikes, it gets more people excited to ride bikes and find a larger bike community.
Yeah. And it's, funny to say it this way, but of course we all find bikes exciting and challenging because we're actually paying money to do these crazy events. Like 30 years from now, you're going to be telling this story and you'll be like, yeah, I paid a lot of money to ride my bike 300 miles. And then end of story. People will be like, what? What? But, we all know what you did and why you did it, and we would want you to do it again. Um, you said at the beginning that I think you said you live in Erie, Pennsylvania, but do you want to give the listeners a quick synopsis of, the community that you live in and what cycling is like there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Erie is on the northwestern part of Pennsylvania, right up underneath Lake Erie. So I live 2 miles from the lake,
Mm.
which is really cool. We have amazing sunsets. Although I have to admit, the Nebraska sunset was pretty damn nice too. Um, and there's a lot of road riding. We have the peninsula here, which is one of the Presque Isle State Park. right in our area. And so
Mm.
it's a huge hub for road cycling and really year-round cycling that a lot of people will do even in the winter there. So we definitely have more road riding here, but I have, through some Strava stalking, have found some riders that also kind of dabble in the distance stuff
Mm.
and gravel community, and have really kind of grown to a gravel community, a gravel group here, and um, have found a really great group of friends through riding bikes.
Mm.
And I have people that we've done these amazing bike packing trips together, and group rides, and the mountain biking here is really amazing. So even though we're a place that it's a really small city right on the lake, um, the cycling community here is really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a mountain bike area called Jake's Rocks. It's the Allegheny National Forest. It's about an hour and a half from here. And probably some of my favorite gravel riding in the immediate area.
Mm.
There are just, single track and double track and gravel and fire roads for miles. And it's really a blast to ride in. And then, a little bit further east, we have Rothrock in the State College area and Wellsboro. And there is really incredible gravel riding in that area. The climbs are absolutely nuts.
Probably
You'll
much
get.
longer than the Nebraska rollers.
Yes, we kind of joke about like the golden ratio, or we call it the PA ratio, where you get about 100 feet to per mile in some of the climbing, and you'll do 50 miles with 7,000 feet of
Oh,
climbing.
jeez.
You can make work here, so there is really a lot, and great bike packing in the area. And so for Pennsylvania, which isn't always from the outside known as having really great gravel riding, PA all day, we have amazing gravel right here in our backyard. So I cannot say enough good things about Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania riding.
Well, and it sounds like you've got a little bit of everything as far as gravel, mountain biking, road biking. Like you've got it all.
Yes. I think the only thing we're missing is a little bit of cyclocross, but Cleveland and Pittsburgh pick up the slack on our end there. So
Perfect.
with a little road trip, you can make that happen too.
Perfect. Good. Well, you mentioned, you recently participated in the Michigan Coast to Coast on a single speed.
Hmm.
Any other adventures you want to talk about or adventures you have set up in the future?
Yeah. I'm really excited, actually. In about a month, I will be doing the Arkansas High Country South Loop.
Mm.
And that one is 487-mile bike pack
What?
race.
What?
And that's the short distance. So the Arkansas High Country has sort of been, I first learned about it in 2019 when I started riding. And just thought it was the coolest thing. It was my first dot watching experience, and it is a 1,031-mile bike pack race that traverses Arkansas.
Wow.
And you get a little bit of everything. And I sort of fell in love with the idea of bike packing after learning about this. And I've dot watched it every year,
Mm.
and just some really amazing riders have taken this on. And actually, two of the riders who I've dot watched over the last couple years in some of the races down there were at Gravel Worlds, and I had the opportunity to
Oh,
meet them.
wow. Yeah.
Brett Stepanek and Lindsay Shepard have both done it. Lindsay became the first female to complete the 1,000-mile race on a single speed last year.
Mm.
And is a huge inspiration for me wanting to try these different events and to continue to single speed. So it was so amazing meeting them at Gravel Worlds, and I'm always excited to dot watch them. And I'm going to be 40 this year, and the race happens to fall over my birthday. And so
Oh,
I said, this is what I'm going to do for my birthday.
it's meant to be.
Yes. So I'm really excited. I will be riding single speed this year.
Oh, wow.
For that. So that's the last kind of event that I have on my calendar for this year, and sort of deciding what direction to go next year, whether it's a little bit more bike packing,
Yeah.
some other races. I think I really kind of like the idea of dipping my toe into the bike packing races, and I think there's a few I'll probably look into doing next year for, longer distances or different types of terrain,
And you
along those
said
lines.
the one in Arkansas is 457 miles. Is that what you said?
487 miles is the South Loop that we're doing, and that starts in Hot Springs on October 8th. So it'll be another kind of fun dot watch.
Yeah. And when you say, 487 miles, please tell me that you'll be like at least taking a nap at some point, right? You're not going to try and do that straight through.
No, this definitely will be some strategic sleeping,
Yes.
whether it's in a ditch or on the side of the road or in a hotel. For the bike packing races, if you leave the course, as long as you come back on in the same place, you can kind of set up camp.
Ah, yeah.
So it's, with the opportunity to kind of race it if you want to, or ride it if you want to.
Sure.
It's all about completing that distance. In whatever method. Some people will have, full tent setups and cook systems and enjoy a route that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to ride, excuse me. And then some people will absolutely race through.
Mm.
And I'm have no doubt there's probably somebody that'll try to push the mileage.
Yeah.
The race director just did another race called North South Colorado. I believe that one is about 500 miles, and he completed that with no sleep, or maybe a small nap. I mean, it's just incredible to watch him do something like that. So absolutely, there will be people that will be taking on this event in the same way.
Wow.
So I plan on at least getting some naps in for sure.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I know I will for sure be dot watching because that is, I don't know, I'm pretty excited for you. If people want to follow you, whether it's dot watching or just, see some of the photos from your adventures, do you have a
Mhm.
place?
Instagram's usually the easiest. My handle on there is large_Marge03.
Awesome. Well, Maggie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I can, I feel the mileage keeps creeping up. So there will be a time, I bet you'll be back on this podcast to tell me about your 1,000-mile Arkansas adventure.
It's a date.
Well, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It was great meeting you at Gravel Worlds. This has been a lot of fun.
You bet. Well, that's it for this week. A few great deals to send your way. Use code MURFOLOGY at hammerhead.io to get a free heart rate monitor with your crew, too. And a shout out to Lily Trotter's compression socks. Use code MURFOLOGY to get 20% off your purchase of the best compression socks. Also use code PRIMALMURPH for 20% off your Primal Wear cycling gear at primalwear.com. Of course, email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology and visit my Facebook, Instagram, and website for daily entertainment. I have more great episodes in the pipeline, so I hope you continue to be a Murphology podcast listener.